Hey everyone, welcome back to What a Thought, episode, what, 5? Yeah, episode 5. We've done this 5 times now. You know what that means? That's 5 whole weeks of staying committed to talking here on YouTube, where no one wants me to talk, and that's great. No, there are people listening. I get a couple comments and thoughts here and there, and that makes me feel good. I'm glad that people are enjoying listening to me talk about things. I've turned down my mic this week, so if I'm too quiet for you guys, I don't know, raise your volume, I guess. I'm not going to peak my mic for your devices. That's just how it be. That do be how it goes. What? What did that even mean? It do be how it goes. I've got my notes here of the things during the week and from previous weeks that I still haven't talked about. Will I ever get to them? Who knows? I do want to kick off by talking about. I started watching You season 3 today, and I've gotten out of the habit of binging shows, like watching the whole thing right then and there. That was a big thing. I had a whole day back when season 3 of Stranger Things came out, where me and my friend we went and got brunch, and then we drove around for a bit and did some other stuff, and then we went to my house and just watched the entire third season of Stranger Things that day, the whole thing. And while I admit it was cool, that was a great time, it started to gnaw on me that doing it by myself is incredibly saddening. No one ever talks about that, the really sad feeling that you get when you watch so much like material by yourself, especially like shows like this. There's 10 episodes to this season, and they're each like maybe roughly an hour long. That's 10 hours. That would literally be my entire day. I would have to schedule meals around that. I'd have to do work around that. That's impossible. So I've started to get out of the habit of binging like that. And I hope more people kind of come to that term too. It's fine when you toss something like this, like the podcast, into the background while you're doing work. Cool. You need a couple of hours of just someone's voice while you're doing some like schoolwork or something, while you're doing some homework, while you're doing some work because you have to take home work because your job hates you. That's cool. I'm glad that I can be that for you. But if you just sit in your bed and watch 10 hour, like 30, 40 plus hours of a TV show, take a break. Spread it out. Go do some other things. That's what I've been really glad I've been getting the chance to do. I've been trying to watch a bit more stuff, like shows and movies, because I'm a cinema major. You might not know that. I'm a cinema major. I'm majoring in cinema. My hope is to go and write some films and whatnot, and if anything, maybe the podcast will be the one thing that survives out of all the stuff I want to do. Oh, there I go. I peeked both sides of the mic. That's beautiful. Absolutely fantastic. So I've been trying to intake more media so I can kind of see what's being made, what's popular, as well as just kind of listening to when other people tell me about stuff and being like, well, I should check it out, in case I ever have to do something like this. That's why I watched Squid Game and Venom too. Other people were like, hey, you should watch this. It's pretty good. Or, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing, so please watch this. And yeah, that's fine. So I started watching You. I think I'm in episode 3. That's where I left off. It's fine. I thought season 1 was pretty solid. And then season 2 was okay. I didn't know it was based off of a book until like later on. So learning that the first season was based off a book and then the second season they made up, you can really tell. You can really tell where they pulled from source material and then where they made things up, like a lot. And it's tragic. And now in this third season, I'm just kind of like, I want to see where this goes, but I kind of already don't care. But the whole reason for bringing this up, besides the fact that I'm watching it and it's, topical, and it means that someone might tune into my podcast who doesn't normally tune into my podcast, because then I can put it in the tags, is because a conversation was brought up about how media has been portraying abusive and terrible people as pretty people. And it's led to this idea in the minds of folk that, oh, well, look at this pretty person, he's too pretty, he won't do anything bad. He wouldn't do anything bad to me. And it instills this feeling that you should be comfortable with this terrible human being when you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. The point of view is entertainment. It's not to make you think that the actions of Joe Goldberg, the most generic named man in the world, is something that should be reviled. It should be reviled. It shouldn't be praised, is what I meant to say. You shouldn't praise that behavior. The stuff that he does, terrible, no good, shouldn't do it. But yet somehow we continue to praise characters like that. I know it's been out for a good bit now. I don't even know if it's in theaters still. I'm pretty certain it is. But Dear Evan Hansen, the Broadway musical, it got a movie. And Evan Hansen is one of the worst examples of that. He's the main character, and he does some of the same things. Like, yeah, Evan isn't going around stalking people and then murdering people to cover their tracks the way that Joe is, but this is a man who, within the grief of a family whose son, he was a high schooler, that's the character, is a high schooler, don't let Ben Platt fool you, who in the midst of the grief of another family losing their child, invents this whole fake narrative that he was friends with their kid so that he could get close to the family and have a family that, like, he quote unquote never had. And it's gross. Like, when you really sit and think about it, you're like, this kid created a whole year's worth of narrative through fake emails that he constructed with a friend to imply that he had a friendship with their son, so that way they'd be sympathetic and, like, connect with him, and then he could connect with them. And then he also falls in love with their daughter. Like, if Evan Hansen was a grown man and not a high schooler, and if there wasn't this message about, like, being honest with yourself and, like, finding a community to, like, support you when you're at your lowest points, then this would be a horror. This would be a psychological thriller about a very it would be The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It would be the movie The Killing of a Sacred Deer, almost verbatim, in a sense. There are differences, obviously. I still haven't seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer. I just know bits and pieces of it. But it would feel just like that. And that's terrible. Can you imagine if just imagine you're in high school, right? And your brother has just done the worst thing that could ever be done. And now you are an only child. And then suddenly this random kid in an arm cast who has your brother's name in big font on his cast is just like, hey, I was friends with your brother. Yeah, a whole year. Yeah, I was. Oh, why did I never come around? Oh, he just didn't want me around. That's all. Oh, no. We were friends. He just didn't want me around. Yeah, no, he signed my cast. See? Yeah, he signed it right here, Connor. That's his name. Yeah, no, we were friends. Here, I'll show you our secret emails that you've never heard about. Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, our secret emails. Yeah, look, here they are. Here's some of those emails. Yeah, we ran through an apple orchard. It would be terrible. It would be the most manipulative, disgusting thing that anyone could ever have happen to them. And you would hate the person that did it. And even by the end of the show, when all of the truth comes to light and they like skip a year, I think, like there's a year time jump. Um, yeah, like they're still upset with him, but they're still weirdly accepting. Like they're like, oh wow, this kid really needed this connection and this love. And it's just like, what? No, don't side with him. That's terrible. Everything he did was terrible. I don't care how terrible your life is. You shouldn't do that to other people. Man, they thought they finally had a new connection to their son through Evan when all he did was lie to them. That's all he did. It's so messed up. And I feel like no one talks about that because they're so enamored by how great the musical is. And then it got buried away because, every year and a half after a new musical comes out, it just kind of drifts off into nothingness. And then all of a sudden it was reignited when they made this movie and they put Ben Platt in it, which was a terrible decision because that man is 27. He is closer to 30 now than he was when he did the show back in 2016 because then he'd been 22. I could believably let a 22-year-old play an 18-year-old, but not a 27-year-old. And we're not even going to talk about the ones where they DH'd him. That's right, guys. There were certain theaters that had a copy of Dear Evan Hansen where they physically DH'd his face, and it's gross. Go look it up. It's the worst thing you'll Google today because CGI has been on such a rise, and that is such a low point. Low point. But yeah, that has been on my mind for the majority of this morning because I just was thinking about it, and I was like, you can't talk about media's terrible representation of like abusive and terrible people without acknowledging Dear Evan Hansen, because that's the worst one. It's a musical. No one can hate a musical, so obviously you're not gonna think about it. Anyways, that was a whole separate conversation that was had from a class actually, which brought up its own separate point. But I'm not going to delve too far into that unless you'd like me to. Let me know. It's nice to get interaction from you guys. It's nice to see what you want me to talk about. But kicking off into another thing, this is from last week. I said I would talk about it, and that was queer baiting and queer shipping. This was sparked from the mentioning of Bucky Barnes. For those that don't know Bucky Barnes, he is a character in the Marvel Universe. He's in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well, which is the movies and shows, played by Sebastian Stan. And for those that don't know queerbaiting, I will Google a proper definition, something I should have done before I started. But again, I never do anything before I start except prep to record. So queerbaiting is a marketing technique for fiction and entertainment in which creators hint at, but then do not actually depict same-sex romance or other LGBT representation. So that's queerbaiting. And there's been a lot of people that got really piffy almost with the way that Bucky Barnes and the Falcon, I forget his name. Oh, Sam Wilson. Sam Wilson and Bucky Barnes as characters over in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Marvel show. The way that some of the ads portrayed it gave it this feeling, this sexual feeling between the two of them. But when you watch the show, you realize, no, that was just kind of our interpretation of it. And a lot of people have labeled not just that, but plenty of other moments from other characters as queerbaiting. And I feel like we have to address a slight issue because what people see as queerbaiting is just two people of the same sex being really good friends sometimes. And it starts to develop this idea that someone can't be a good friend to another person without wanting to pursue romantic feelings with them. And that's not the case. Plenty of people should be able to be free and express their gratitude to a friend without there being an ulterior motive of wanting to date them, And I think that presents a set of issues that has persisted throughout our society. Obviously, one of the things that like isn't as prevalent now, but the whole idea of like no homo, you don't hear it as often between two dudes that aren't really that good friends. But when two dudes are really good friends, all of a sudden they're saying it way more often when they talk to each other, because there's this perception that them being closest friends means that they're gay. And I feel like this twisted look at queer baiting and like queer shipping has really affected that for a lot of people, because now like, oh, we can't portray two people being really good friends on television, because to be really good friends you kind of do have to be in a sense sort of intimate, you know. If someone who's really good, a really good friend is always there for you, they're always kind, they're always understanding, they're always helpful, they know when they need to give advice and when they need to listen, you know. There's someone you can rely on, someone you can always turn to, you know. To be a really good friend, you almost essentially have to have all the qualities of being in a relationship, you know. You've got to have that trust, you've got to have this depth, especially once you start to get to know each other. That's the thing, a lot of people who end up in relationships, if it's a long lasting relationship, yeah, you take all the time to know someone. But with friendships will last years and years, some decades and decades, and depending on how old some people get, they might have a friendship that could last a century. So when you know someone for that long and on such a personal level, you know their family, you know their siblings, you know their birthday, you know, you talk to them on the regular, you get them gifts for Christmas and when it's their birthday, things like that. You're essentially in a relationship, but without any of the indication of it needing to be romantic or sexual. And so when people get upset at seeing two people in media portrayed with that depth and that level of friendship, and they're like, oh, you're just queer baiting, you know, you're just trying to get the LGBTQIA plus community to come in and see your show. And it's like, no, I just wanted to show what it looks like when you have a good friend. And I feel like Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson have been the butt of that in recent times, you know, because their show came out this year. And there was a whole lot of people that were coming at it. And I think, I forget his real name. Oh, Anthony Mackie, who plays Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. He talked about it, that it's, yeah, they have a relationship and that's a friendship, which is a type of relationship. And there shouldn't have to be this need for more than that, because that's not how those characters are. They're friends. Just because it's something that the audience wants doesn't mean that it has to be. And now, I'm not saying that queerbaiting isn't a real thing. I'm just saying that queerbaiting has created an issue that is the idea that trying to portray someone as being a really good friend suddenly has to imply that they're more than that, or else people will start to label it as queerbaiting, and then you'll get hate for something that you shouldn't have been getting hate for. And I'm going to drink some water because my tooth hurts and I don't know why. I hope you couldn't hear that. I was like, I think I'm drinking that water a little loud. Because that's what we do, right? We drink water a little loud. But, yeah. It was gnawing at me. And then queer shipping is its own issue, which leads back into the queer baiting idea, because, like, as stated, people want Bucky to be gay. They really want him to be gay. And they all wanted it to be with Steve, but Steve is an old man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, so they've pushed it over to Sam Wilson, to the Falcon, who is the new Captain America. And that is the idea that then leads into the issue of the queer baiting thing, because when a large mass of people are like shipping these two characters, right? They're shipping them, and they're like, yeah, these characters, they're gay. They're definitely gay. They have to be. And then suddenly they see that friendship, that true and proper friendship start to form. They're like, oh, well, now they're queer baiting us. They're like, they know that we want this, so they're giving us all the elements of this without giving us that. And it's like, no, that's That's not it at all. Take a step back and reevaluate your friendships, and you'll notice a lot of them start to look like this. If you've ever driven out in the middle of the night to go help your friend who's crying over something that has occurred in their life, and you just exist with them and you keep them company and like make them feel better as a friend, dude, that's so someone would look you dead in your eyes and say, no, you two are dating, if they followed the principles being set by something like the ideas here. And that's not true. That's not true. Just imagine that. Just keep that in your head, because I'm not gonna do a bit. I'm not gonna do a bit on it like I did to the Dear Evan Hansen one. That's but yeah, I feel like people really need to take a step back. It's fine to want something, right? I'm not trying to say that it's wrong to want Bucky Barnes to be with Sam Wilson. Cool. It's interesting to know your thought process. But when you start to really push that idea and then start to give hate because that idea isn't being presented, because it's what you want but it's not what they were trying to do, like that's when issue starts to arise. That's what I don't like about that, you know? Let it be its own thing. If that's the route it wants to go, that's the route it goes. And if it doesn't, then cool. Let it be. That's just how it has to be. But that's I wanted to make sure that was brought up because it really irked me to see it, you know. And of course, obviously, other media out there has had their issues with that. Supernatural is probably the biggest offender for the idea of queer baiting, because they really do present that the relationship between Castiel, the angel, and Dean Winchester could be something more. And then in the final moments where they finally let Cass reveal the fact that he was in love with Dean, it's purposely done so that he can sacrifice himself. So he immediately dies. That's queerbaiting. That's upsetting. Don't do that. And that leads into another issue, because he immediately died, and that's the bury your gays trope. If you've ever watched media where there are members of the LGBTQIA plus community and they're not the main characters, and it's like a drama, like not a comedy. Maybe sometimes it'll happen in a comedy, but usually in dramas, they tend to die by the end. By the end of whatever you're watching, whether it's Brokeback Mountain or is it Men Don't Cry or Boys Don't Cry? Both. What's his name? Jake Gyllenhaal's character in Brokeback Mountain doesn't make it to the end of the movie. He is inevitably killed. The main character from, I think it's Boys Don't Cry, which is a movie based off of a real person who also died in real life, and then they was in the movie too, so they don't make it to the end. Castiel in Supernatural, you know, he dies before they finish off the show, so he doesn't make it to the end. All of these characters and these like issues, and they like issues? No, all of these characters, and they the moment it's like, oh, well, how can we affect the drama of this show, Mr. Writer? And the writer looks in the eyes and they're like, oh, we're gonna kill the gay. We're gonna bury the gay. And someone said, genius. And there's plenty of other media, okay? There is plenty of other media that has had that same issue occur all the time. And it's bad. That's bad. I understand being upset with that. Go be upset with that. Don't force someone's really good friendship to be something more, to satisfy something that you wanted. You know? Yeah. I'm trying to remember other examples, like off the top of my head, and I just really can't. Because I think now that it's become more prevalent, we've tried to lessen it. Horror movies were really bad with this. For certain. Horror movies, oh my gosh, they really, really dug into them. And there's a whole idea out there that a lot of horror is based on the idea of villainizing minority groups, which isn't wrong. If you look at some of the early films, not just horror but anything, if there was a cut and dry villain, if you look back at early cinema, it was usually African Americans. And then once people started to not willingly accept that as much, and they shouldn't have from the start, but that's a different point. Once they started to move away from that, that's when they just kind of started to villainize minority groups, you know? Trans people, gay people. Like, look at Norman Bates from Psycho. This is a guy that has dissociative identity disorder, but that wasn't the thing at the time. That wasn't a prevalent, known, like, thought. This was just someone who liked to dress up as a lady and commit murders, you know? Or Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. When, I think after the first one, that's when we get the pretty woman getup, where he's got the makeup on his mask. Like, horror has this history of demonizing those that are different. And when they don't demonize those that are different, they usually kill them. They usually make them meet their maker. Make them meet. They make them meet. You are now a slab of meat. I hope you enjoyed your time as human, but I remove limbs. You are meat slab now. Num num num. You are meat slab now. Num num num. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's what I get for not making jokes. I say things like that. Okay. What else is in here? As I try to move on from that, because that is a very long and loaded idea. What do I have? Blazing Saddles. Oh, I'm going to ignore Blazing Saddles for now. Sex Education, actually, the show. Its third season. A lot of third seasons, I realized. But its third season came out a couple weeks back. And it sparked a conversation about sex ed. Sex ed in school. And how really piss poor it is. I don't know what it looks like now, because I'm 20 and not someone in the 5th grade. But when I was in 5th grade, you can go ahead and do that math yourself. You know my birthday if you listened to the last podcast, which you should have, because they're really good. But when I was in 5th grade, we were shown a video about... Was that 5th grade? No, that one was 6th grade. I don't remember what the video we watched in 5th grade was, but what I always vividly remember is that after we had our little introduction to, like, puberty, right? That's right, because that one was about puberty, and then 6th grade was when they talked, like, sex ed. But after our little talk about puberty, right, they gave all the boys this little booklet in, like, a clear bag, and it came with a stick of deodorant, because I guess the idea in everyone's head is that until the 5th grade, boys just don't know what deodorant is, which is gross. I had deodorant. I used it all the time. I knew that I sweat a lot. I was like, I need deodorant. This is gross. The idea that there are children just without it. I'm pretty sure every child already knew what deodorant was. But we got a clear baggie. God, can you imagine? Children are so vile and so stinky. Can you imagine if they didn't have deodorant? I would hate it. It'd just be little stinky boys. Sorry, little stinky boys broke me. I think I found the title. Little stinky boys just running around, having a blast of a time at recess, and then having to come sit inside. Oh my God, I feel it in my brain. I can remember the scent of a bunch of school children running around on a playground and then coming inside, and there was always at least 5 boys who had smelled like they were the uniforms of an NFL football team, and it never made sense. And I think I understand now. They didn't know what deodorant was. Duh. Or maybe they just didn't know what a shower was, because I knew what a shower was. I had a lot of hair on my head. I had braids as a child, so obviously I was keeping myself clean because I needed to keep that clean. And if you weren't keeping yourself clean as a kid, I hope you found deodorant now. Little stinkers. All those little stinkers running around. It's not even that funny. Someone's probably laughing. If you are, thanks. But so we had the clear baggies. I'm gonna go repeat this for the 10th time. Clear baggies, little booklet, deodorant, right? And that was all the boys because they'd split us by gender. We leave the classroom to go back to our regular classes where we, see the girls of our classes again, and they all had fucking like manila envelope folder type things. They were not allowed to tell us what was inside, and it was this whole like secrecy thing. And I was like, what is the point of this? Like, hey, what's in yours? And all I would hear back is, you can't ask us. Stop asking us. We're not allowed to tell you. And I'd just be like, oh, okay, we have deodorant. Hold up the baggie, we've got deodorant. Like I'm that girl from Finding Nemo with the fish. And she's just shaking it. Like, we've got deodorant. Ooh, what do the girls got? Oh my gosh. And so then that was that. And then 6th grade, all I can remember is learning about how and this was from watching a video from the 70s. I can't 70s or 80s, and I cannot express this enough that by this point it is the 2000s. So it's almost 30-year-old knowledge that if you wear jeans that are too tight, your balls will chafe. That was it. That's all I remember. And then probably something about AIDS, about how little Timmy got AIDS from a blood transfusion, and now he has AIDS. And they were explaining that not all AIDS comes from sexual transmission. Sometimes it's from a blood transfusion. And I was like, wow, what a terrible thing to learn right now, because what the fuck is AIDS? That wasn't explained. All that was explained was that AIDS can come from other things other than sex. And so in watching Sex Education, the show on Netflix, I kind of realized that the idea of actually educating people on sex just doesn't exist in our culture. There's this weird gap because I feel like schools don't want to go, at least until you hit college, they don't want to go in depth about certain things and whatnot. Not at all. And then parents expect schools to do it so that they don't have to do it, because for some reason parents just don't want to tell their kids about sex. Because there's this weird stigma that if you know about sex, then you'll go have sex. When, if you know about how, sex properly or not, you're still going to end up going and having sex. The difference is if you know about sex properly and you're educated properly, you'll go have safe sex. You'll go and have sex that is safe, and you'll know your boundaries and how to respect yourself. And the fact that any dude who tells you that the condom is too small for his dick is lying to you. No, it ain't, dude. I've seen those shits blown up like balloon dogs. You can put that on your fucking 2-incher. Do it now. And because of that, there's a lot more people out there that are just clueless about things. It wasn't until I hit my first semester here at college that I truly learned about why you're not supposed to put, I think it's there's a certain type of lube that on certain condoms, the material, I forget which material it is, but I know, and I can go search about it again, but if you put it on there, it disintegrates the condom. So don't mix those two things. And even just something as simple as that is knowledge that I spent 18 years not even knowing. Obviously 5 to 11-year-old me didn't care. I wouldn't care to know about those things, but after a certain point is when I start to get questioning. I start to wonder. I'm like, oh, what do I do about these things? And I don't get any answers, which I thought was fine. And then it wasn't, and I was like, oh, okay. So even something as simple as that, there are people that don't know that. They just think, yeah, This is lube. This is a condom. I want this to be better for her. And then they don't know, oh, your condom just dissolved. And you don't know it. And now you're a dad. Enjoy being a dad. Did you want to be a papa? Go be a papa. That's how you be a papa. You do things like that because you're uneducated. Or even not even something like about that, just like the idea of sexuality. Like that's never taught either. You know? People don't talk about the idea that, oh, someone might be gay, someone might be bi or a lesbian. And like I understand that it's a newer thing. Not a newer thing. That's a lie. It being public and like accepted is a newer thing, which is disheartening because people are just trying to live their life. They're just trying to love the people that they love, and instead they are garnered with ridicule and a lack of knowledge. And it's just so terrible because all it would take is just one health class to teach you all of these things. You don't learn about any of this stuff in health class. You know what health class does? It spends a whole lot of time telling you to exercise and eat good foods, and then they have like one section where they talk about like testosterone and estrogen and like all that jazz, and that's it. They don't go any further in depth. They tell you that if you put your popsicle inside of the space, you'll make a baby if you're not protective, and that's it. That's all the knowledge you get. And it's like, that's not enough. You need more time to expand and really delve into this. And that's what I enjoy about Sex Education, the show, is because over the course of its 3 seasons, it presents the idea of being knowledgeable and willing to like learn as a step forward towards growth. You know, people learn and they get better, and they know not just the things they need to know to go do stuff, but that they know the things that they need to know to better understand themselves. You know, it becomes really hard to understand why you feel so different when people don't want to talk about those differences. You know, when it's so closed up, you know, and so like held within to this point that it's just kind of like, oh, well, what do I do? You know, what is it about me that feels so wrong? And there's nothing about you that's wrong. Nothing at all. You're perfectly fine. And it's just that you don't know. There's a lack of education, a lack of understanding. And once you get that understanding and you get that knowledge, you can really shoot for the stars, because now you can understand yourself. And that's why sex education needs to be updated. You know, eventually everyone's going to possibly procreate if you're asexual, or the people who are under the umbrella term that is asexuality, probably not. But other people, they might end up maybe possibly doing the do. And if they're properly informed beforehand and know themselves to the best of their ability, then they're suddenly way more prepared for what's to come than if they're not. That was a bad pun. For what's to come. Oh my gosh, it was so serious up until that moment. But yeah, and people that teach abstinence only, which appears to just be Christian schools and like really, really conservative schools, like, don't do that. Don't just leave it at that, and let people ask questions. Look, I'm perfectly fine if you want to present abstinence as an option. Go right for it. But what you shouldn't do is tell them it is the only option and then shame them for wanting to know more knowledge. What? All that does is teach people to be afraid. And we're not supposed to be teaching people to be afraid. We're supposed to be teaching people to willingly learn and grow. Just like that. That's all you need. I'm drinking more water. Ignore the silence. Oh, it got on my pants. No, not on the laptop. Oh, come on now. I've got one of those cups that like has the little lid thing so you can close it a bit. And I guess it splashed water everywhere. That is such a big spot of water on my pants. That looks like a drop of pee got on it. That's so upsetting. Alright, what else is in here? What have I got? You know, I've already come this far. I may as well talk about another movie I watched to help cheer up the mood. I watched The Guilty on Netflix, which is an American adaptation of another film of, I believe, the same name? Or it might be in a different language. Yeah, it's from Denmark. The OG was from Denmark, came out 2018. And the whole premise is that these people, this dispatcher, this officer, he's been demoted from being an officer to being an alarm dispatcher, which is weird in its own right, because I feel like that's a weird thing to get demoted to when you mess up as an officer. Like, I'll go handle the incoming calls from like people. I wouldn't want them to do that. Maybe that's just me. But he gets a call, and it leads to this whole search for this woman who has supposedly been kidnapped, and it's a whole thing, a whole thing. And it was a really compelling movie, and I kind of wish I had seen the Denmark film and not the American version, because that's a whole issue in itself. We really are in this weird society where it's like, oh, well, this movie was really well received overseas in its native country. Let's adapt it for an American audience. And cool, I get that the American audience doesn't want to read subtitles because they're apparently all blind. They all apparently just can't read fast, I guess. But you lose a lot when you change something for the audience. Like, it's one thing like with Steve's list in Captain America: The Winter Soldier that changes its pop culture references depending on where the movie was playing. That makes sense. Sure. Whatever. But to just fully remake a film just because there's a language barrier really destroys like everything that the movie held dear and whatnot. And especially if it's like almost an exact for exact. Like, when I pulled up just now, I pulled up the page for the Guilty, the Denmark movie, and they immediately, like, the trailer does its little thing where it's like, here's a little bit of the trailer, and I see him drop this like Alka-Seltzer tablet or something into this water, and I was just like, oh, that's the same thing they just made. I remember that same exact shot with Jake Gyllenhaal over here. And the concept is really cool because there's not a lot of movies that stay in one space. And I know everyone out there is like, what? A movie that's in one space? Dude, why would I ever watch that? No, I need my action films to have 17 different locations and star Hayden Christensen. It has to star Hayden Christensen. He was in Jumper, right? That was Hayden Christensen? I know, this is a separate tangent. I'm pretty certain that was him. I thought that was a good movie. Yeah. It's Hayden Christensen in Jumper. Go watch Jumper. Maybe I'll talk about that next week. I'll go talk about a terrible 2008 movie that I thought was fantastic. I'm about to put that in my notes. But yeah, it's in one location, and it's all through the like phone calls in the dispatch. And I thought that was a really cool idea because, yeah, there's not that many films like that. The only other ones that are really like that are Locke with Tom Hardy and I think Panic Room. I'm pretty certain. And also like OG Saw, because even though all of its flashbacks are set outside of the one room, like everything else like current for the film takes place in the one room, and that's the closest you're gonna get. But I was just like, as the movie went on, and having the knowledge there with all of the fact that this officer played by Jake Gyllenhaal had been demoted. He also has a terrible name. It's Joe something. What is it in the it's Asger Holm in the original Denmark film, but it's Joe Baylor. It's Joe Baylor in the American one. But eventually you find out that, and this is near the climax of the film, but you find out that Joe killed someone while he was on duty. Like, he killed someone, and they drop the like threads and the pieces throughout the whole film, and the end comes around with him like telling his friend who's supposed to testify the next day, when, you know, because Joe was supposed to get off shift and he hasn't, to tell the truth and which will put Joe away for years, because he killed someone. And I was just like, I feel like this film would have been better if we just left that out. Sorry if you wanted to watch The Guilty, but I don't think anyone really wanted to watch The Guilty based on the reviews. They're quite low in comparison to the OG film. But I feel like there's just been way too many films. There's this weird feeling in Hollywood filmmakers, and I don't know if it's just me, but they all want to sympathize. They all want to express this weird sympathy for the people doing the wrong. And I feel like that's what this film did, and it shouldn't have, you know? You find out by the end that Joe killed someone who was like 19, right? And that he had no right to do it. Like, it wasn't in self-defense or anything. He just did. And now he's going to go to jail for it. But you feel this weird sympathy for him throughout the movie. And I'm just like, I don't want that. I understand that this was the final things we get from this for this character, but I don't want to sympathize with him. If this is what he's done, that's not cool. That's not cool at all. Watching him face his demons would have been fine if it wasn't done in a way that made him such a sympathetic character. And I know they tried to make him not seem so sympathetic, because he makes a lot of mistakes throughout our time in this one space with him just answering dispatch calls. But it rubbed me the wrong way. You know, I did not like it. It reminded me of how everyone felt about Antebellum and the Tubman movie, the Harriet Tubman movie, because the Antebellum one gave you this premise as though like she was being sent back in time, was gonna have to find a way back to the future. And then she was just, what was it? She was just in a reenactment park. And it was like a social experiment. They kidnapped African Americans and put them like in a Civil War reenactment park. And I was like, this is, what? I was like, that's so dumb. Why give us this premise and this idea to explore such a topic of a modern human being being stuck back in slave times, and then do that? And then, I already forgot the other one I mentioned. Antebellum and what? Oh, the Tubman movement. Because in that film, they created a fictional African-American character to be the villain. And I don't know about you, but I feel like the only villain that Harriet Tubman had to face while doing the Underground Railroad was Caucasian people. No offense to the plethora of Caucasian people that I know, but you would agree with me that creating a fictional African-American villain for this African-American character, like main character, to face off against instead of just letting it be the white people feels wrong, right? It's like it's directing the anger and the upset towards the wrong group, you know? Like with the what was that? With Antebellum, your anger is suddenly towards, like, not towards white people of the past. It's towards just this terrible situation that is weirdly haunting, because I feel like, and weirdly dumb, because I feel like anyone could accidentally end up in something like that, but I also feel like you would know. Like, there's no way that someone would look at what's happening there and just be like, yeah, this makes sense. And then for Tubman, all of a sudden, the anger and upset about slavery is suddenly aimed at this fictional African-American character, and you're supposed to hate them suddenly more than, like, the white characters, and that's not Gucci. I don't know. So that was the thought process that came while I was watching The Guilty, is that you've got us sympathizing with the wrong people, and you've got us upset with the wrong people, because you should be upset with Joe. You should 100%, especially throughout the film, as things go on, he's very quick to act, and he's not quick to think, which is a big issue with a lot of just real life people that are in these situations, in these moments. They're very quick to action, and it's a whole big deal that everyone's like, oh, well, you gotta be quick to action, and it's like, no, you can take a nice deep breath and wait and, like, think on it. Just think on it. That's all I want you to do. This has been a really weirdly serious podcast for something that's probably going to get called Those Little Stinkers. Because that was the funniest moment. And no one will tell me otherwise. Because you will agree. Because now I wanted to end a little more lightheartedly. You would agree with me that if you saw a group of children running around on, like, a playground for, like, an hour, which if you're watching children, that's weird. Unless you're their parents, then it's less weird. But if you suddenly they run past you, there would just be this wave of scent that would just destroy your face. You would look like the scene in Terminator 2 where she has the nightmare about them dropping the nukes and it vaporizes everyone. She's just a skeleton holding onto the fence. You'd look like that. You would not know what to do. Because you can't just tell a random child, you fucking stink, kid. No, it'd be rude beyond compare, and also don't curse at children. I did it because it was funny, and there's no real child here. I enjoyed that if I didn't say that, it would make this weird implication that across from my microphone is a child that I just cursed at. But they're just little stinkers. But yeah, so that's the podcast for this week. It was a lot. It wasn't a lot. In fact, there's still a bunch more topics that didn't get talked about, but there was also a very large amount that did get talked about. And I'm glad I was able to talk a bit more about the queerbaiting cruise shipping thing, because it irked me. And it irks me what people try to count as queerbaiting too. Someone brought up a movie in a class that I was in, and they mentioned Blue is the Warmest Color, which is not queerbaiting. It has its own issues. The director who made it was straight, so it's not known if he consulted anyone of, a lesbian orientation, because there was a whole bunch of criticism about the fact that a lot of the sex scenes were very straight. They wouldn't be the way that lesbian people have sex, but that's not queerbaiting. Yeah, the information presented was inaccurate for their lesbian relationship, but it was a lesbian relationship. They didn't. The movie would be very different if that wasn't there. I can't imagine what that movie would look like if that relationship wasn't there. So it's not queerbaiting. So that's its own separate thing. Is that some people, I guess, don't understand the difference between a problematic film and queerbaiting. But yeah, so yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in to What a Thought. Look at that. I made it through the whole podcast episode, and I didn't say the title until the very end. That's fantastic. Make sure to check out everything else that I'm doing. There's a link down in the description that'll show you all the stuff I do, from Twitch to my gaming to my social medias, where if you don't want to leave it in the comments, you can tell me there the other things that you want to hear me talk about. It's really helpful for if people leave things down in the comments, or DM me about it, because then it makes it a lot easier for me to have something to talk about that people want to hear about. You know, that's how we got the whole thing about Dildo Newfoundland last week. But yeah, that has been episode 5 of What a Thought. Thank you guys again for tuning in. I've been Matthew, and I'll see all of you on here next week.